Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stephen A. Williams, president and founder of thecreditrepairshop.com. And in today's video, we're going to talk about charge-offs and write-offs. I want to talk about the misconceptions that a lot of people continually ask me questions about. So I think that this will help you out if you have questions about it. Also, some of the, one of the things that I see from time and time again is that people will say that if I have a charge-off on my credit reports, that means I don't owe them anymore, that they've charged it off or they've written it off. So what I want to do here is I want to, number one, outline exactly what these things mean. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that that debt collectors or original creditors can or cannot do regarding a charge-off. So first, let's take a look at a charge-off. Like, what is it? When a debt shows that it's been charged off or written off on your credit reports, this is exactly what it means. There's a lot of people don't know this, but there's a 180-day rule. There's a 180-day rule. So what that means is that if you make no payments for 180 days, or really for, 6 months, that they have to write off that debt. They have to write off that debt to take it off of their books. They can't have false reporting. There's banking regulators, there's investors, whatever it is. This account must be put into a bucket of non-performing accounts. And the rule right now, we'll just leave it for credit cards because it can be different depending on what type of loan you have. But specifically for credit card debt that has been charged off, there is a 180-day rule. You go past that date without making a payment, even if you call up the credit card company. There are some exceptions: Discover, Capital One, and American Express. But all of the other ones, if you were to call them up, they would not more than likely even be able to take your payment. And you might be saying, well, why is that? Because they're going to be packaging it up potentially to sell to a debt collector. So American Express, Discover, Capital One, they are known for keeping their accounts, and they will hire outside collectors to collect on those accounts. So they would try to push you into a different program where you would be paying them some type of a payment back, and they will try to do all types of arrangements for you. They go over and above to try to figure out a way to get you to continue making the payments to them. Other providers, they're just like, once it's charged off, it's off of our books. We're in the business of getting more people on our cards and sell those debts off to a debt collector. That's just what they do. So even if you try to call them, you won't even be able to do anything with the debt unless it's one of the three that I just named, because they just won't do it. And people get very frustrated over that because they're like, I owe you the money. I'm trying to pay you the money, and you won't even take the money. And there's even been situations where a debt collector got the debt, because that's going to happen down the line, and they were like, I don't want to deal with you. I want to deal with the original creditor. And they were like, you can't deal with us. You have to go to that debt collector. Aren't they doing it for you? No, we sold it to them. They sold that debt to them. So let's look at what, so here's the big misconception is that if it is charged off or written off, that I don't owe because it's been charged off or written off. So that right there, I'm just letting you know that is not true. I don't care what you hear over the internet. I don't care what you hear here on YouTube. If you have a charged off account, number one, no one recognizes that you don't owe the money, but I'm going to get into the ways that you could eventually not owe the money, especially if it was sold. If it's maintained by the original creditor, I don't even understand your mindset of thinking that you don't owe it if they charged it off. But I'm going to kind of give you some reasoning about why people on the internet or here on YouTube may think that if an account was charged off, the reason why you may not owe it, even if it's from the original creditor, and it's because there's mass confusion with the IRS. So if the debt is charged off, you do owe it, but I'm going to go into how the IRS looks at it and why there might be mass confusion about you owing the debt or not. And there could potentially be documentation stating that you don't owe it, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can request that from the IRS. Now, the next thing is if it shows on your credit report that it's been charged off or written off. A lot of people believe that they don't owe the debt. That is not true. It is just stating where that account is. Just think about it this way, logically. If the account was open and you're making payments, wouldn't they record that you're making the payments on time, or even if you're late? And now the same thing, if you're not making the payments and it's not an open account anymore, they're going to mark on your credit that it's a charged off account so they can let other creditors know what's going on with that specific account. That's just a necessity on their reporting. The next thing, so here, let's dig into this here. One of the biggest problems that I saw when rereading the IRS on the IRS website, because I like to reread because there's always something that you didn't see before or that you weren't thinking about, and so you didn't pay attention to it. One of the things that specifically is not showing on the page documents that I reviewed today was that they never did speak about charge-off. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of misconceptions about the charged off debt, because they do specifically speak about written off debt. And then they do specifically speak about written off debt with the original creditor. So now let me speak on this real quick, because this is very, very interesting. Recently, we had a whole bunch of clients who were sued by debt collection companies. And something that had happened was we helped a client with winning a lawsuit where they were getting sued by multiple debt collectors for credit cards. And we had stated, they had gotten a letter in later. So they won the case, but later they got a letter in from the original creditor that they had filed a 1099-C. I'm talking about, it was 3 1099-Cs filed by this original creditor. And we were like, well, why was this debt collection company trying to sue for that debt when the original creditors had filed a 1099-C to forgive the debt? That means that they would be like, you don't owe that debt anymore when they do that, because the IRS is going to say that because the original creditor wrote that debt off and charged it off and sent the 1099-C cancellation of debt, they got the full benefit of the write-off. And but the other side of that is that no one can come after you for that debt. That is the rule. That is the law. So that had happened, and so what we started doing is we said, you need to, when other clients that are being sued, we need to also have them start calling to see if a 1099-C has been filed by the original creditor. And then we were saying, anyone who has a charge-off account, you need to call to see if a 1099-C has been filed by the original creditor, because the IRS is undermanned right now. They need workers. They're trying to hire, and Congress is going through whatever they're going through to not get in the budgeting to do it. They may get 1099-Cs and they don't submit them, send them out to you, and the original creditor is supposed to submit that information to you, and for some reason they're not even getting it out to people. So you could potentially not have to pay a debt due to it being forgiven by the original creditor, and you don't even know about it, and then a debt collector buys a pool of debt, and then all of a sudden you're paying for a debt that you don't even have to pay for. So we do highly recommend that you call the IRS and just simply state, if you have a charge-off account with an original creditor, you want to see if they filed a 1099-C on that. Now, on the documents though, with the IRS, it says that for written off accounts settled by the original creditor, that any amount paid for less, the amount, so you had a $10,000 credit card you settle with the original creditor for $5,000, they will send a 1099 to the IRS for $5,000, and they want that to be reported as additional income on your taxes. Now, something that I found very amazing when I was going through the documentation is that the IRS does not recognize debt collectors to do that same thing. The IRS does not recognize a debt collector to do that same thing. So if you have a debt collection, you settle it for, let's just use that same example. You have a $10,000 debt collection. You went through all the verification, validation. You need to move on. You need to get this done and over with. You had to debt with the original creditor. Yeah, they bought it for pennies on the dollar. So you just say, hey, I got to get my family into this home. We're going to make way more than this $10,000, but I'm going to settle for them for less, so it doesn't matter. But I want to be able to get my family into that house because that's the way we're going to build wealth. So you have that mindset. So you're just like, Mr. and Mrs. Debt Collector, with the original creditor, I owed them $10,000. With you, you bought it for pennies on the dollar. I will offer you $1,000 to just let this go away. You made 1,000% profit on it anyway. And you go back and forth. Maybe they say, hey, we found out that you're trying to buy a house because we looked at your credit reports and we saw that you had some inquiries from mortgage lenders. So we're going to play hardball. We want to get $2,000, and we'll even remove it with that $2,000. You're just like, okay, it's all done. It was $10,000, settled for $2,000. They cannot send the IRS a document stating that they forgave the other $8,000. And while I was doing that, when I was reading and I was doing that research, something came to my mind that validates what I've been telling you over and over and over again when it comes to debt collectors suing you in court. So let's line this up. I hope everybody can follow me on this. This is very, very important. So real quick, let me review here. Charge off, write off accounts. There's a 180-day rule of making no payments to the original creditor. They have to charge it off, write it off. If it shows on your credit reports a charge off and write off, that does not mean that you don't owe it. When they charge it off and write it off with the original creditor, does not mean that you don't owe the original creditor. But depending on which type of, if it's which creditor has it, American Express, Discover, and Capital One are known for going after their accounts. They will hire an outside debt collector to go after people to get payments on that, and they have a whole bunch of different programs they offer to get payments. The other credit card providers will sell them off, and for pennies on the dollar, and no matter what you do, you will not be able to settle with them, no matter what you do. So if it shows on your credit reports, that still means that you owe the debt. You're just gonna have to figure out what's gonna be the way that you're gonna resolve that debt depending on who that card was with. The IRS states that any written off debt settled by the original creditor, they must file a 1099-C on the remaining amount because they want you to have to report that as income. You will not have to have it as income. There's a waiver form that you can utilize for that. They'll even tell you that. The next thing is that the IRS does not recognize debt collectors for settling debt as income. So if you have the same account was sold to a debt collector, $10,000, you settle with them for a couple of $1,000s or whatever you settle for, they cannot send the remaining amount to the IRS on 1099-C. So now that gets to what I want to talk about here. What I've always talked about when you're being sued by a debt collector, and that is debt collectors have to prove their claim. So what do we mean by prove the claim? The claim amount let's just use our example, $10,000. So they come to you and they say, well, you owe us $10,000, and we have 2 statements or 3, even 3 statements, whatever they have. And on this statement, it has $1,000. You charge $1,000. So technically, if they can show that you had $3,000 in charges, which I've never seen that when it's like this, but if they can show that they have accounting records of $3,000 that they charge, they can prove $3,000. They still can't prove $10,000. But for the purposes of this video, what I want to make clear for the validation is that the IRS is even stating right there in plain English that if a debt collector buys a debt for pennies on the dollar and they settle with you for whatever amount less than what that face value of $10,000 is, that the IRS still does not recognize that the debt collector had $10,000 of debt that you owed. So they will not be able to file a 1099-C on the remaining amount. That's why I always tell people when you're dealing with debt collectors, and people get this halfway, they get it halfway. They do a debt verification where they see, how did you get my debt? That's you should do that. But the biggest part of it that they don't want you to even question them about is prove the claimed amount. The claimed amount is, how did you come up with $10,000? You showed me 1 statement, you showed me 2 statements, you showed me 3, which is, this would be like an anomaly. I've never seen anything like that. But let's just say that you had the account and you charge $1,000. They would have enough based on the law to at least come after you for $3,000, which I don't even believe would happen. But you would still have the right to do a full validation of the debt to get to their claimed amount of $10,000. So what you would do, even if they had this, and they're like, hey, we know we got $3,000, but now the next thing is you want that full accounting. And the IRS has just validated what I've always told you. They just validated it because they do not, they specifically state that they don't believe that the debt collector has that information. So if they don't believe the debt collector has that information, you have a right to request that information. And if you're being sued by them, that is like your number 1 tool in your bag, is to make them prove the claimed amount. They're going to have statements. They're going to have an affidavit from the original creditor. They're going to have something about that they had this pool of debt and all that stuff. None of that stuff is going to really matter if you make them have to prove the claimed amount. And the IRS just validated what I've always been telling people. So no matter what, if you're wherever you're at in the process of dealing with a debt collector, you make them verify the debt and you make them validate the full claimed amount that they're claiming that you owe. And that means that you want to see all of the documentation from day 1, from when that account balance was 0 all the way to what they're claiming that you owe. And if you can get that pushed into their minds that you are not going to stop until you get that information, you will see that debt collectors will back off of you and they will go after the other literally millions of people who do not put this information that I'm sharing with you into action. So if you need help with your credit, please visit us at thecreditrepairshop.com. Watch the video, What Makes Us Different, so you can see my 8-point validation process, my 2-phase settlement process. This is something that we do for our credit repair clients. It's included. If you need your credit reports and scores, go to the website your3scores.com to grab your TransUnion, Equifax, Experian credit reports, because you're going to need that to see what the creditor or debt collector has put in the comment section as a charge off, written off, how long ago was it, it could be past statute of limitations. All of that stuff matters. You need to get all of the information. If you have debt collectors coming after you, grab my 3-pack of letters: statute of limitations, debt validation, and cease and desist collection activities letter. Not a cease and desist communications. It's a cease and desist collection activities letter, which has a line in there specifically asking them to prove the claimed amount. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the channel. All the links to everything that we offer are below the video. This is Stephen A. Williams, President and Founder